So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, and their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Michael Mitchell and Elissa Thursfield at Hroes. Guys, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like, firstly, like to introduce yourself, Hroes, what you do, how you help people, that would be amazing.
No problem. Yeah, I'm Michael Mitchell. I'm the MD at Hroes. We are a HR software and services business. We do three primary things. We do HR software for
Yeah.
small and medium businesses. That is with a more of a compliance angle than is traditionally in the market space. And we do traditional consultancy services. Um, we not only support small businesses directly, but we also bolster HR departments. We provide a much kind of in-depth legal grounding in terms of Alyssa's experience and the
Right.
wider team around her. And recently, we've started to become an e-learning business as well. We recognise that we would utilize the assets that we have, and one of those is Alyssa's brain, which is full of years of experience in the employment law world.
Brilliant.
And everybody knows that in e-learning, it's not the software that costs the money; it's the content. And we effectively have free content there. So those are the three things that we do. It's a crowded space. So yeah, we have a funny name that nobody really knows how to pronounce. But it's coming together, which is really good at the moment.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Elissa, if you'd like
Yeah,
to
so
introduce
I'm
yourself.
I'm Alyssa, and in the theme of funny names of things that people can never pronounce correctly, mine is also one of those. So as alluded to by Michael in my brain, my background is I was a traditional employment law solicitor, so I specialised in supporting businesses, worked my way up through the legal ranks, became a director at a firm and a head of department, and got a bit fed up with the way that small businesses access their legal support and also for
Yeah.
HR software. So if you don't have the biggest pockets, you can't necessarily get the best lawyers, or you're nervous about legal spend. And it's those small businesses with the lower level of resources that often find themselves getting into compliance trouble and often end up getting sued. So they're not playing on a level playing field, and it feels vastly unfair. So I decided to leave private practice, and that's where the Hroes software was sort of born. We decided there's a better way of doing HR software. We can do it in a way that means that we can build in guidance to support smaller companies. So
Great.
they're not having to reach for the phone and pay £400 an hour for a lawyer before they need to. We tie into that the consultancy service and the e-learning. So the idea is we're empowering businesses to do things better themselves, to increase their compliance, lower their legal spend, and be more confident in business.
Brilliant, brilliant. Hey, sorry, you made me. A thought came to my mind. One of the things we often say is because what I'm hearing is you're targeting those sort of the
Mm.
smaller businesses, the ones that don't have that access and deep pockets. And I'd urge anyone to go to your website because the
Mm.
sort of investment levels are really affordable for any business at any
Mm.
stage. And thought that was great. The challenge we often say is when we're coaching businesses is the first couple of hires are often our best mate's auntie's son's dog walker, or
Mm.
it's just someone we know. And the challenge often is A, it's a poor recruit, but it's there available. And B,
Mm.
if you know them, the actual then parting with them becomes very emotional, very difficult. And they're probably the more difficult challenges than your
Mm.
50th employee who's they've come, they've gone, that's okay. And it's sort of a bit so I can really see how this would really help people that have
Mm.
started a business, perhaps with challenges with the original crew they had, because often, as I say, we recruit on people that are handy and so one
It's an interesting time as well in terms of the small business space, in that you've got kind of two separate demographics of businesses. You've got the ones that are kind of a little bit head in the sand. We're not big enough yet to need HR. Now,
yes,
that's a fallacy straight away. If you have an employee, you need to
brilliant.
have kind of HR function, whether it's yourself or what you're doing. And the fact that the world is changing quite dramatically at
Mm.
the moment. And that's one thing and one challenge that we're trying to really passionately address is that we understand that the regulation and changes and things like diversity and sexual harassment, things that we hold in just our kind of moral heads as as non-negotiables that we wouldn't do. But businesses need to accept that there is a reality out there that means you need to train yourself to do X, or you need to address issue Y. You cannot hide from this, regardless of A, the way you feel, or B, how big you are. It is applicable to everybody. So if we can help support a business and provide some kind of affordable way that they can address that, then great.
Brilliant.
And I think what you said, Chris, about recruiting family members at the beginning, it's one of the things I hear most often. I don't need HR. All my family work for me. So what can go wrong? They are the most toxic tribunal claims that you will ever come across. People spend more money suing family members than they will somebody else, I'll tell you now. So it's so high risk because we never do it properly. They don't need a contract. I don't need to discipline them for that. It's my brother. No, you absolutely need to get stuff in place.
Totally with you on that one. And the other side to this, even if they're not family members, it's okay. We'll wing it for a while because it can't. What's the worst could probably happen? Well, you don't really want to know what the worst could happen is. It can be pretty bad, and I get that. Yeah. So no, this is brilliant. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. So just to give us an idea, let's just two questions then, just off the back of that. Just give an idea of a typical client, but also part of that, what makes an A grade client for you? Who do you serve best in this space? Who are the guys that you go, great, we know we can really help?
I think, Elissa might have slightly different views in this just because we touch across kind of slightly different breadths. I think the best and the most ideal customers for us are those with an HR function. And the reason I say that is that they've spent a lot of time educating themselves up through the ranks and working really hard in a business. And what they don't want to be then doing is becoming an administration person because the business is commercially excited in that respect.
Right.
You've not done that level of education and got that much passion about what you do to sit behind a desk running a payroll report once a month. So on that side, we provide the software to do it. Also, you don't want to get dragged down into the silly day-to-day issues like grievances that are raised out of just avoidable things. Yeah. So the software is inherently designed so that managers don't make the silly errors. It's every page in terms of performance appraisals and grievance is sat there with advice there. Don't do this, you can do this, you shouldn't do that. And that's really the grounding premise for the business in general, is that we are not a software business that is telling you how to do your HR. We are inherently, with HR DNA, creating a software company to service that.
Perfect.
And simply once we have a really strong HR function that understands how the technology can utilize their business and set them free to do the more complex and strategic things, the consultancy services really compound that, because again, equally, if they're getting themselves much more high profile within a business, and for want of a better term, they shit the bed on something, that they don't want to be exposed in that way. So Elissa provides a lot of the time very much the silent backup there that really provides real guidance on top of any kind of serious and business decisions that she makes. So those things together kind of create that perfect unicorn customer for us that really suits our ICP.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. That makes a lot of sense. What are your thoughts, Alyssa?
I'd say similar, but it depends. So for me, job satisfaction wise, it's when I've got a company that doesn't have the HR function and they are in a tailspin trying to deal with something, and I get to come in with my cape on and kind of fix everything and bask in the glory of being the person who solved the problem. So for me, for job satisfaction, it's those that don't necessarily have that HR function. But then equally, when you have got that in place, I really do think we can make a real strategic difference for that business. We can help to make them more efficient. It helps that HR person get more out of what they're doing and upskilling, and we can really see how we're adding value there. So yeah, from the commercial perspective, Michael's absolutely on the money, but for job satisfaction, I love the ones where I get to be the hero. So
brilliant. No, I love that. But I'm glad that's the question because I was literally talking to somebody yesterday about marketing in general, and most people say, well, what's the best client, and the easiest thing to say, anyone that needs HR support, let's say, And the challenge when, there's a simple phrase in marketing that if you go for everybody, you get nobody because the message is too weak, if that makes sense. It's like anybody needs HR. Well, we all need HR, so you can't be talking to me. But the way we can still address that market, but it's by having lots of smaller marketplaces with different challenges. So what for me, you've already identified there's two key, at least two in this sort of network, but they will have different requirements and needs. So it's one, if that makes sense, and therefore the marketing needs to be different to each one of those, but we can service them in a different way. If that makes sense.
This was something that was very new to me. So from my legal background, lawyers generally are dreadful at business. We're really good at the law. We're really good at kind of the billing and making money. But when it comes to managing a business, we know very little.
Yep.
And I was on Barclays, an Eagle Labs accelerator this year, and there was a big piece about this, knowing your customer and your customer profiles and personas. And it was a fascinating session for me because I think in the back of my mind, I knew, we have to know who we're marketing to. But the idea of naming them, turning them into an avatar and go, right, today we are selling to Janice. This is who, we need to target. So for me, that was a big learning piece as someone who's come from a non-traditional sector, then into the business sector, later on in life. And really, really understanding that as a marketing concept. So yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Brilliant.
That's the key to driving product as well. Alyssa's exactly bang on the money. Is when you start a software project, and we see this every day, we're constantly evolving and developing this product, is we have 1,000,001 things that we want to do and we want to produce. We could do this module, we could do that module. But when you kind of dress away all the ambition and the moonshots, you can kind of strip that away and say, what does the customer actually need to do? And where are they having the problems? And that's exactly the ethos in which the system's designed. We know that HR software has probably been marketed to take away traditional admin, the old spreadsheets, but what it's actually become is digital admin. You're spending more time clicking the buttons in the system and getting things in the right place than you were doing the spreadsheets anyway. So it's just transferring the workload. So that's really difficult to solve without kind of very, very in-depth AI, which is still not there yet. But what you can do is provide value by adding that legal expertise and guidance in there, and just making sure that, the work is still there, but believe us, we're going to stop you getting sued, and we're probably going to pay for our software price per month back, tenfold the first time you don't get on the wrong side of a tribunal.
100%. No, this is great, guys. You may not be aware, we work with businesses through the spectrum of startup through to tens of millions of pounds worth of turnover. But the challenge is you don't get to 1 million until you start at 10,000 and 100,000. You don't get to 10 million until you start one. So, but most of the support, because for many reasons it's probably higher margin, only starts when you get to a certain size, and but we can't get there unless we've got support. And I know you do more than just small businesses. I'm not pigeonholing you there, but the fact that you have got an option that allows businesses and business owners at an early stage to tap into your skills and resources is wonderful. Because there are, as you said, Elissa, that idea of family feuds, family fights, whole bunch of stuff going on, and it's I've seen that a few times. So wonderful. So just a quick question for both of you. When you were growing up, is this where you perceived yourself you'd be right now? Is this week, or did you have other plans?
I wanted to be a heart surgeon, and then I did chemistry GCSE and was brought back down to earth by my chemistry teacher, who was saying the sciences, STEM's not for you, Elissa. So I went into the law, and initially thought I was going to be an international tax lawyer. So I worked at an international law firm. So a big American corporate firm, and I absolutely fell in love with employment law. That was it. From my first day in the employment law department, that was it for me. And again, never thought I'd leave private practice. I thought I'd sort of head on the traditional way, get to the senior leadership, and would sit there quite comfortably till retirement. I did not think at the age of 35 that I'd be leaving a very secure job. And going and making a startup and living a very insecure life. So no, it's not what I wanted to do at school, but I wouldn't change it. I love what I do.
Brilliant. How about yourself, Michael?
I mean, software wasn't really the bastion of the small business when we were, 20 years ago, when we were in our teens. We were looking at, this, what was out there were the behemoths, and you kind of never really considered it. Certainly always was heading towards a commercial destination in some respect. big love of kind of numbers and all things process driven, and that's always something I've kind of been really secure with. And I think once I kind of fell towards software, albeit accidentally, just through the sales world and the commercial world, absolutely where I knew it was going to be from that point onwards. The way that the businesses work, inherently number driven, inherently process driven. Elissa adds a level of humanity to balance us up as well, with the guys as well.
Brilliant.
So it's kind of come around the right time, and Elissa kind of married up with my expertise in the fact that Elissa had kind of done the employment law side of things, really understood on the ground what was going on in terms of the challenges, and I'd been in the HR software world for the best part of 8 years. I'd been in a private equity-backed business in Access that had was a rocket ship, and it just kind of reached the end of a transaction, and it was a case of, do we want to go do this again? Do we want to bet the whole farm on this, or should we put our balls on the line and see what's out there and see if we can do it ourselves? So yeah, right place, right time, I think, and it evolves every day. It's not how we envisaged it on day one, and it's not how we envisaged it last month, but that's the real growth in things.
Brilliant. You put me in mind of I think it's Michael Gerber in his book The E-Myth talks about what he calls the entrepreneurial seizure.
Yeah.
And it's stopping working for an idiot and starting working for a lunatic, i.e. ourselves. And it's
Yeah.
it's I don't know if that resonates, but I know it resonates with me. But it's great fun. And I say, I mean, I've been lucky enough to have my own bought and sold my own business, and then I've been coaching businesses to grow for the last 20 years. And it's just that, I love it. It's
I think the biggest thing is the emotional highs and lows are far more acute, severe,
100%, yes.
and quick. Within kind of large corporates, I mean, my last business I worked in was kind of knocking 7,000 people. These are 2-year strategic plans that don't ever change.
Yep.
It's a giant oil tanker that steers very slowly.
Yep.
Whereas we can change on the whim of something happening on a daily basis, which is great as a small business for agility, but for regulating your own emotional state can sometimes be difficult. Me and Elissa have both had to tell each other, I'm not going to be here this afternoon. I need to go. And equally, we'll get our teeth into something and be messaging each other at 11 o'clock at night saying, have you seen this? I think we should do that. So that you see both sides of the coin, and you certainly learn to emotionally regulate yourself probably far more than you might have 2-3 years ago.
No, I would agree. It's interesting. I remember the CEO of my organization telling me a long time ago, and it always resonated. He said, Chris, the job of a business owner and leader is to solve problems. That's our job. So, ultimately, if we don't like problems, it's probably not a good idea to have a business or run a business. It's like, but I've taken that thing, and I think since then I've come to believe that problems are a feature of growth. Like, we call them growing pains. It's as we grow, we create problems. Therefore, problems are good. It's probably a sign if we haven't got any problems, we're probably not growing as fast as we could do if we chose. Not suggesting we've always got our problems and we've always got to grow, but when things are starting to coast, we could go again if we want to. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, it takes some real, steel and rigor to remind yourself of that. And to your point about making sure that you're moving the obstacles out of the way of your staff. I mean, that's been the big thing that I've noticed is that whether it's we fell into it by accident or by design, is that the staff that make up the business are everything. We've got some wonderfully talented people, whether they realise that or not sometimes.
Yeah.
That are running through brick walls for us. And at the moment we have challenges in a number of areas, and it's a case of me saying, well, what can I do to alleviate this? What can we do right now to make your day easier and get these things done? And actually, the progress is better than if you are too many cooks spoiling the broth and intervening every 5 minutes. What are you doing? Where are you doing it? So I think that's been a real piece of recognition that for the guys that are in here.
Brilliant.
And I'd say for me, from like an emotional resilience standpoint, all lawyers do is solve problems.
Yes.
that is what lawyers are. We
Yep.
read volumes of stuff and we solve problems. And I think what we're very, very good at is understanding the scale of a problem. Is this something that's going to be a problem in 5 minutes, or is it going to be one that's going to be a problem in 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years? And understanding, is this something that needs to keep me awake at night, or is it not? So I think I'm quite good at that. So I'm quite good at riding the highs and the lows and staying very neutral and not getting carried away when it all gets a bit too exciting, but also not feeling like I need to go sit in a dark room when it all gets a bit dreadful. But I think that's the one thing that actually my legal career has put me in good standing for, is that sort of roller coaster of experience, because you're so used to it, particularly because I was a litigation lawyer. There's nothing like kind of having an amazing sort of session with a client and then going getting shouted at by a judge all in the same day. And it's, you know, so you're all over the place all the time. So I think that has given me a really good foundation. And then particularly, like Michael was saying, when you're saying to the staff, what can I do to make your life easier? But it's also that kind of, right, well, let's just think, how big is this problem actually? Is it something that we can park? If it's not, what can we do to take the emotion out of the situation and just solve it without having to get too in our heads about it?
Brilliant. Look,
we've got one staff member as well there that is incredibly good at what he does, and he won't mind me saying this, I spend my life talking him off the ledge. But that's great because he cares and he's passionately involved.
100%.
And he's incredibly effective at what he does. And so, Elissa certainly is great. You can see that in her head that she's screaming, but there's a very calm, measured face on her.
I think my deadpan for Zoom calls has got better. I can.
Oh, brilliant!
Without looking like I'm too pissed off.
Mine is camera off.
Is it you bring to mind? There's a quote from Tony Robbins that I like, which is very similar to what you said, Elissa. Was if it doesn't matter, if it won't matter in 5 years' time, it doesn't matter now. And it tells a lot of people I've worked with that just idea. Well, 5 years from now, I won't even remember I've done this. This has happened. It was just like it'll be a thing. In fact, I said something to yesterday who were having a couple of that they've changed a whole bunch of stuff in the business, and they've had 4 resignations in that morning, and we were talking about it, and you know what that meant, and it was expected because they were changing shift patterns and all sorts of stuff. It wasn't unexpected, but it's like, will it matter in 5 years' time? Well, no, we won't even remember we had to. So it's something that's helped me. It's just like as you said, it puts things into perspective. It doesn't feel like it's not a problem, but it won't be. Therefore, I don't need to give it that emotional. But talking about problems in general, what are, looking back over your growth so far and your successes, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you guys have had to overcome as you've grown the business?
You can go first, Michael.
I'm trying to work out how diplomatic.
We don't need to speak from my perspective, but if your perspective you do, that's fine.
Yeah,
I'll jump in. So
I think, Hroes, that I think you've always got to recognise now, nothing will ever go to plan. Okay. The worst thing you can do is rely on something turning out the way it should do. However, I think one thing that's been really successful for us in recent months is being agile and doing things quickly. So, Elissa had the brainchild of our e-learning business on a train on the way from London, brought it to a board meeting in a week. Our investors are equally agile in that respect in terms of their thought process. Within a board meeting, we decided to go do it. We had it built inside 2 weeks. And that was it February, Elissa? Yeah, so we went live in February, and we've got kind of 20, 30 customers on that already.
Well done.
We've expanded it to a second subject matter in diversity and inclusivity. And it's fast becoming, one of our leading revenue makers in a month. And recognizing a good idea and kind of getting it rolling quickly, fail fast and fail spectacularly if needs be, because otherwise you will sit banging your head against the brick wall waiting for the plan to come true, and it just might not work.
I'd say from my perspective, and again, I keep leaning onto sort of legal background, but I worked with a board of people that I'd known for a decade. I knew my team very well. Board relationships were really easy. My team, again, very little management needed. to then go into somewhere where you're managing investor relationships with the team. You're obviously the client facing side of the business and managing all those clients, and you can finish a day and think, I don't feel like I've actually done any work. All I've done is stop people from crying, shouting at me, and still want to stay with the business. And feeling like you're spinning those plates, it's a real dynamic change to kind of recognize that actually, just because I'm not doing fee earning work and I'm not necessarily speaking to a client today, I am still working. I'm doing the work of the business. And there's this weird guilt that comes with it because I'm not sat down doing a piece of legal work. So that for me has been a real kind of change of pace and recognizing the value in that as well.
And Elissa won't say it, but I will for her, is that stepping out of the comfort zone is a massive thing. We, like Elissa mentions, we've made her the face of the business very purposefully. We recognise that I'm not the person to do that, and I'm very self-evident into the fact that we need somebody who's probably a more friendly face. Elissa's got credibility there on the subject matter, and I could never go for a run at 6 a.m. and talk about employment law. I certainly couldn't do it credibly, and I certainly wouldn't want to be anybody. Nobody would want to look at that. So, Elissa put her reservations aside and said, "Yeah, I'll do this." And in terms of statistical measurements, we've broadened our social media reach 4- or 5-fold in the space of a month on that. So I think that's been a really powerful lesson. And something I've learned is, don't let your own reticence or discomfort get in the way of just doing something.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's a big thing we work with people on a lot. Is our comfort zone is primarily our success zone. So the bigger the comfort zone, the bigger the success we're going to have. That sort of, the more we're willing to do stuff. What I find interesting a lot with people, and that I often find, actually, our comfort zone isn't our comfort zone. It's actually discomfort. It's uncomfortable. So why people stay there, I have no idea. But it's like, well, I'll just do what I do. But you're not really enjoying what you're doing. I know, but I'll stay where I am. It's more habit. It's a habit zone, isn't it? But
we've gone from never having enough content and asking Elissa for it to having a bank stored up now that's probably a couple of weeks in front. So I think she's secretly enjoying it now.
Oh no, I think what I do is I get them out of the way. I think, I can get myself in the mindset, right, bang 7 videos out, and then they'll leave me alone for 2 weeks. It's just brilliant. It's that, it's, what is it, grasp the nettle, eat the frog, whatever it is, just do it, because the magic happens outside of the comfort zone. Nothing wonderful ever happens somewhere you're comfortable. And I think, well, you know what, in 5 years, I look back and might go, well, that was actually a turning point, that we were able to capture this new audience. So, my pride and my dignity is a small price to pay. But I'm certainly paying it at the moment.
Pride and dignity, I like that. But no, I mean, you bang on. I've been lucky enough we've just come for the back of we have a 2-day business conference every year. This year we had about 1,200 business people together, and we had some amazing speakers. So it was the 2 days were topped and tailed by a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk, who you may or may not know. If you search on, he's got 49 million followers on 450 million followers on business marketing in general, and then a guy called Daniel Priestley, who is also well versed in social media marketing, and Gary was very strong on the why to do it and the values. Daniel was very analytical, quite analytical, and one thing that came to mind, and it was very relevant to my business too, was that people recognize and associate people and personalities weigh 20 times more than a business brand. 20 times. It's like, wow. I mean, that's and the stat that I picked up for I do like football. I'm more of a rugby man, but from a sport perspective, if you're familiar with Cristiano Ronaldo, the footballer, he has 3 times, let's get this right, 3 times as many followers on social media as all of the Premiership football clubs put together.
This is a trend that's happening everywhere, and specifically in marketing, B2B is always light years behind the B2C world. But what I've seen is some really tremendous examples in the last 6 to 12 months. It's happening in America first. It always does. We're always a little bit slower to catch up. We're always kind of a bit hard-nosed and about making the change over this side of the water. But I saw a revenue attribution, a marketing business in America, cut a humongous marketing budget, over $1 million a month in paid ad spend, completely. Because their ROI wasn't there. It was making the money, but it was law of diminishing returns. And the founder and the owner of the business went absolutely ham on personal brand building on LinkedIn. He's in any kind of commercial face space, one of the most recognizable people there. And his brand went from a very stagnant, kind of consistent, kind of 6, 7, 8% growth every year to 30, 40, 50% in the space of 6 months. It is a flywheel that takes a long time to get moving, and it's hard to keep the faith. But absolutely that. If you can become a personal brand yourself, you will drag your business along with you just
100%.
as a secondary. But also you become a massive asset. I've seen people even in the UK space, a guy called Tom Boston. He's a kind of cold calling funny man on LinkedIn, but
Okay.
his personal sales coaching brand must be through the roof because he's everywhere. And I think those ultimately is the cream that will rise to the top in the next kind of 2 years. They will become the influencers of business. They will be the people individually that the salespeople that you see on LinkedIn, preaching about their product passionately and doing really, really well. If I was a business leader in need of a hunter killer salesperson out there, they'd be the first person I'd be bringing to go get, and they will get the big bucks because of it. So you can see that transition beginning to happen, and if you get ahead of it, it'll pay dividends.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It was certainly learning for me. Just not learning, I guess, just supporting a decision process that I probably knew was the best thing to do was to be the face of my business. But for lots of reasons, including I think a lack of ego, I didn't really particularly want to be, if that makes sense. And also,
I think it's really in that game. I think that just as maybe the people who want to start a YouTube channel these days, it's too late. Realistically, instead of maybe 5% of people making it, it'll be 0.01. We're still in the early stages of executive influence, and the people who are doing it now will be the people that are untouchable in 5 or 6 years.
yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. I was going to say, and the challenge I have is obviously a face, as I say, a face for radio rather than anything else. But you have to overcome these challenges. It was something. Luckily, I mean, we were talking before we started about starting these interviews in COVID, and it really was for me. We did them as a necessity to help people, and therefore it helped me overcome the need outweighed the challenges. If that makes sense, the purpose was there, so it was something I felt we had to do. So we did it. But yeah, we have this thing. Have either of you seen? There's a really cool 2 minute. Well, there's various lengths, but and I know he's particularly lost some of his shine. But there's a video of Will Smith talking about overcoming fears in terms of going skydiving. It's a really cool clip, and it was something and he uses the phrase which is quite similar to yours, Elissa. Was I think on all our dreams on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's a brilliant video because it does talk. If you skydive, you get it, and if you haven't yet, but all the fear is before you jump out the plane. All the fear, and then when you jump out, it's the most blissful experience you could ever have. You're sort of floating or flying or whatever that, and so at the highest stage you're at before the parachute opens, you're in the most wonderful state, and yet everything up until jumping out the plane when you're relatively safe is where the fear comes, especially lying in your bed the night before. It's like that's where, oh my God. And so it's really fascinating how we do react and overcome fear. And so whether it's from your successes or challenges, but what are the biggest learnings you've had about growing a business? What are some of the things that you've picked up along the way, alongside some of the things we've talked about?
I'd say for me, it's one, not only maintaining perspective, but you've got to have that ability to be fluid and agile. If you're too fixated on this is the way I'm going to do things because I'm used to being in charge, I'm used to being a leader in a business, and we do things my way, you're gonna fall at the first, if not second hurdle. You've got to be able to be flexible and think, right, okay, this isn't quite working, this isn't bringing enough money, right, what can we do to change that? And so you've constantly got to be opportunity spotting, thinking, is there a way that we can improve this, make it more efficient? There's almost no breathing space, particularly in a startup when things can happen so quickly. And it's, I suppose, one, managing that perspective so you don't blow things out of proportion, but two, that you've absolutely got to be on your toes all the time.
I think it's the measure of those two things. You've got to be agile enough to take risks when that opportunity presents itself. but really mindful of things that need to stay the course. There are things that might not be working
100%.
particularly right now, but there is a coherent plan behind it, and
Yes.
it might just need a bit of air cover for a little while with other things to help it out. On my side, though, I think that, and I know Elissa shares this, is that me and Elissa are pretty much we're bang on the same age. We're 38 years old, and we're in that transitional point between generations where we've got a number of staff that work for us that are of a newer generation. And the workplace is just so dramatically different, accelerated, of course, by
Great.
COVID. And I think Elissa, this is a real challenge for her because she's come from, uber professional type of law firms where, rules are set in stone and you are governed and you are billing by the minute, to, having to manage people in their 20s where they have different values, they expect different things, and the feedback that you provide cannot be done in the same way that it was done to us.
Completely agree.
When we didn't turn up to work, you were late, and that was that, and whatever reason you had for it is irrelevant. And we took that as the gospel. Now it's different, and we have to understand that resilience is maybe not an attribute that's as deeply bestowed in this generation. I've constantly talked to Elissa saying I need to give this feedback. Am I being too direct? Because that is my stuff. That's a real learning curve. Is just noticing that generational shift. There is so much talent coming through. They're so much more capable because of their exposure to stuff. But if you want to keep these people around, you've just got to recognise that there's a hell of a lot more nuance now.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a culture shock. I mean, I came from, it was like, dear Elissa, would you mind please doing this? Kind regards. And then I get staff go, all right, mate, can you do this? And it's, and it's lovely. I love the informality of it. But I remember when we first started recruiting, I was like, oh, this is very different for me. Very, very different. And they are. It's just, there's nothing wrong with that generation. It's just they work in a different way. But as Mike said, there's a huge amount of talent there.
I 100% agree. And it's in, and I'm probably another generation or half a generation ahead of you guys, but absolute. But what I see time and time again, there is a belief that the generation coming through has, is lacking in drive or determination or purpose. But it's just they aren't. They're just different, and our job as leaders is to engage them in a different way than we're engaged. I would suggest if that makes sense.
It's challenging yourself and your own opinions on things. And Ollie, who co-presents our podcast, shameless plug for that, HRER.
No, don't be shameless.
He will not mind me saying that he walks into the office every day in an outfit that I just look at thinking, why would you wear that to work?
I say he dresses like a Backstreet Boy.
Yeah, and it's perfectly acceptable clothing. It's functional. It covers the body and it keeps him comfortable during the workday. It makes no difference to what we do as a business. So I've got no reason to disagree with it other than personal choice. And keeping myself a deep breath, and not breaking any diversity laws, as I'm conscious of. You have to challenge your own opinions. Why am I being offended by those trousers? It's a silly thing, to think. So
and I think it brings us back to that perspective thing as well. So one of my favorite things to quote at the guys is, will it make the boat go faster? So I don't know if it's a book, if you've read it, it's Harriet Beveridge and Ben Hunt Davis. It's about the Olympic rowing teams.
Yes.
And if it won't make the boat go faster, why are we stressing about it? Chuck it out the boat, whatever. Is talking about all these trousers going to make the boat go faster? No, it's not. So we don't need to talk about it. It's fine, and that's what I bring stuff back to. Will it make the boat go faster? If it's not relevant, forget about it.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, it's interesting how standards and norms come in. How we perceive other people. I do remember going into a bit. It was actually a client that is still a very successful e-learning business. Funnily enough, she's probably going back best part of 10 years ago. They were quite early doors into it, and but fairly, I think the average age was probably about 24, 25. The founders were only in their early 30s, I think, at the time, and. Where they were based, the offices didn't have any air conditioning, and it was 10 years ago, really hot summer, and my traditional wear would be a shirt and trousers, possibly, the sort of stuff. I wasn't like suit and tie, but it was like this was the next day. And I remember going in and it was really, really hot. And they just said, look, when you come next time, just wear what you like. You know, it's cool. They're all jeans, t-shirts, shorts, flip-flops, whatever. You know, and I went, yeah, thank you. That makes perfect sense. Logically, bang on. And I turned up and I think I had a sort of a, let's say, a polo shirt and a pair of, you know, I will not say I don't do tailored shorts, but, you know, short trousers rather than,
Yeah.
you know, football shorts or something. And I sat there, we did session, and and this is, I feel really bad about this because I think this is not bad, a reflection on I really struggled to sit there in a polo
Mm.
shirt and a pair of shorts doing what I consider to be my profession. Well,
Yeah.
it is a profession, sorry. But you know, it was my
Mm.
uniform, and it was part of my.
Mm.
You mentioned right at the start putting on the cape and
Yeah.
stuff. This was my
Yeah.
uniform, and I went out of it. I really felt quite uncomfortable. I'll be perfectly
But I
frank.
think if it makes you comfortable, it makes you perform, then,
Yes,
great. I remember 15 years ago, and this was when I was back in corporate law world, and there was a paralegal I shared a desk with, and it was freezing. Manchester in the middle of winter, it was freezing.
yes.
And he came in with a knitted jumper over his shirt, and he was sent home and told to come back dressed properly. I think what a waste of a morning.
Yeah,
If he's comfortable, or bring the lad a heater so he can take it
100%.
off. And I think that again, it's that loss of perspective. But if someone's comfortable and it's not offending anyone, crack on.
Yeah,
It's, I think we've got to, I think the old fashioned ideas about, yes, I think appearances matter to some extent. We've got to, particularly client facing. I would never be wearing anything offensive across my front, so on a call or anything like that. But if someone's comfortable and they can perform, let them get
100%.
on with it.
There's a lot of time that if you look back and think to yourself, we used to spend a hell of a lot of time and resource on sweating the small stuff. The
Mm.
number of HR policies that are based on the way that you dress were probably far more geared towards how the people in charge felt about
Mm.
what you should wear,
Yeah,
not the practicalities of does this make you do your job better? And the
Mm.
same thing is happening now with where you work from. There's a lot of people sweating about where you work from, not whether it makes you more productive or not, because they
yeah,
feel you should, and they're struggling with that transition. Um, and it's crazy. And that's one of the things
completely.
that, like Alyssa says, is this making the boat go faster? Why are we even talking about it?
Mm.
But bang on. Totally agree. Um, so I think you're probably where we're a business coaching organization. We talked about a little bit.
Mhm.
I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest influence on you guys?
I'd say for me, so in my spare time, I'm an RNLI volunteer. So I'm a helm on a coastal lifeboat. So I'm in a command position.
Oh,
The
goodness.
coaching and the leadership training I had from the RNLI is world class. So when it comes to managing fear perception, risk management, dynamic risk assessment in a leadership capacity, just I've never seen anything that's come close in my entire
Wow.
career out in terms of law and business. So for me, like the structure and the way that they do it, and really, about that pushing your comfort zone, but making sure you're doing those dynamic risk assessments so you can justify what you've done. That really is the standard of coaching that they give is outstanding.
And whereabouts is that?
So I live in Abersock, so I'm coastal for where I live, but obviously the coaching is down at HQ in Poole, so at Lifeboat College.
Oh, sorry, Michael, for a second. So I grew up in Pencanewydd, which
Oh,
is
okay. Yeah.
halfway between Pwllheli and
Yeah.
Nefyn, if you probably know where.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I'm on Abersock Lifeboat.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my neck of the woods. Brilliant, love it. I'm glad I asked the question. In fact, you knew that was an
Yeah.
aside, but brilliant. Sorry. So yeah, Michael, how about you?
I think that the businesses I've been in have had some unbelievable leaders in there. And I think that there is always a misconception that you walk in, and Access is a great example. You've got a business that started with 50 people, that is now 7,000. And
Wow.
the two guys that, at the top of that tree are in charge are still there today. And you would assume that if you have made that journey, that there is a ceiling of competence at some point that you must hit. How can you have made that transition all the way through and still be there? And that was almost my impression when the business I was in was acquired and bought by Access, and I was kind of merged into that field. And being around those guys, a lot, and understanding that they are so completely on the ball all the time, and not being the smartest person in the room anymore was just fantastic to know. That how have they achieved so much? How have they got such a span of control, and how do they still know the level of detail that they've got and still have the passion to do so? Really kind of opened my eyes in terms of
Right.
thinking about my own ceiling. Is that it's not about doing X and doing Y, and you'd be a blue chip CEO because you've got an MBA from Oxford. That actually the guys who are doing it on their own terms in a private business, and they've done it since day dot because they're just in the weeds all the time. And they never let that go to the head. There was no ego there. And I think that's really the most powerful thing is the best people in charge of the biggest businesses are the ones that don't have an ego.
No, I agree. Yeah, I would really agree. And I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk talked about this last week, and he said, good guys do win. Good people do win. We don't have to be this sort of whatever that image we can have of some personal business. Doesn't mean there aren't those sorts of people around, but you definitely can be the people that, and great leaders are. Great leaders have a marked lack of humility,
You
and
think
that's why
you think
people
about
follow
that,
them.
and you can think about that in the most famous examples. I mean, you've got your hyper famous people like Bill Gates. He started in a garage and ran Microsoft at 20,000 plus employees. And there's how many examples are there of those people that you just don't think of in that way, rather than the blue chip CEOs that have done the traditional route through their business schools and led businesses by grad schemes and just jobs for the boys and progression. So
Absolutely.
it's a massive difference in terms of what I've seen as the most competent, successful people.
Absolutely. Brilliant. And from the people that you've learned from, or other sources, do you have any favorite quotes or sayings that you catch yourself using quite regularly?
There are the rise of this personal brand stuff that we were talking about
Yeah,
has made a massive influence on me recently, and that's just because I'm absorbing such a humongous amount of knowledge and viewpoints from so many people. I think that in terms of just commercial sales and marketing operations, there's a guy called Chris Walker who runs a podcast called Revenue Vitals. The We're at a seminal point between sales and marketing, where kind of traditional digital channels and the predictable revenue model where you could put everything back to a number have been really, really challenged. And his ability to distill and condense it all down to something that's manageable and understandable has been great. The fact that he looks like a Brad Pitt really probably helps his brand as well. He's quite polished. So that's where we recognize in ourselves where maybe I'm not going to be the face of the business. But yeah, the people like Chris Walker, Ryan Walsh, the gentleman who runs RepView as well, the insight that they provide for free is kind of quite mind blowing these days. And I think that's been a real eye opener in terms of the ability just to access this stuff just by osmosis.
brilliant.
Yeah, and I'd say for me, I can't remember who said it. I don't know if it was anyone particularly famous or it's just something I picked up on a session. And I think it particularly resonates with women, this one, which is don't be shy about being ambitious. There's this real kind of, I don't know if it's a British thing that we very much downplay ourselves. There's almost a modesty, or, we don't want to put ourselves out there for fear of being seen as a failure if we don't hit our target. We should never be shy about being ambitious. Tell the world what you want to do. And,
Absolutely.
amazing if you hit it. If not, well, you've tried and you've done more than 99% of people. So it's that confidence to put yourself out there.
Brilliant. Love it. Absolutely love it. 100% agree. It's part of telling other people anyway, it also creates an inherent level of accountability. Without it being direct accountability, if you tell people
Yeah.
that there was something said, and it's not quite what you said specifically, Elissa, but it's like if you want to make sure you achieve something, the best person to tell is your worst enemy. Because guess what? They're gonna they're gonna be all over you if you don't get there. And it's like it's either that, or I would actually suggest tell your family, because
Yeah.
and directly relate that to
Mm.
something. I remember coaching somebody and just saying, look, what's your biggest dream? And that was to take his kids to Disneyland, or Disney World, I should say. And I said, great. So we're going to do this stuff, and you're going to go home tonight and say, when I've achieved that, I'm taking to Disneyland. But of course, if I don't, then I won't.
Well, I think that's a massive thing
Guess
to learn
what?
as well, is that I mean, to quote a book, the subtle art of not giving a F
Mm.
is wonderful. And it's the same thing like that way. You don't, when you gain more success, your problems don't evaporate. You just upgrade your problems. That's all it is. And I think that one thing that to address about kind of going from Elissa, really successful legal career, myself, in a kind of really successful commercial perspective, is that to those people who might think you're mad, is that we've jumped into the void and tried to do it. And if tomorrow it all went down the spout, we've done it, and we can tell you that we've done it, and we've learned a hell of a lot more in the last 2 years than we would have done sat comfortable, in our previous roles. The easy option is to stay in your comfort zone and not do it. And it's like I say, it's back to that whole perspective about challenge yourself a little bit.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of going back to the inner child. It's really interesting. There's I can't remember who talked about it. It was the idea that as children we have no limit to our ability to dream. If that makes sense. That there is no, oh, but I know I'm not making it. What do people think of me? It's like, no, I'm going to be an astronaut, or I'm going to. Or whatever it is now, I'm unfortunately probably now I'm going to be a TikTok star, but we'll push that aside. With James, and the challenge many of us have in the world, I think, is that we reduce our dreams to hit our reality rather than increase our reality to fulfill our dreams. And that's the challenge, isn't it? And that's where telling people and be confident, as you said, Alyssa, about telling people and saying this is what I'm going to achieve. And I'm lucky enough to work with a number of entrepreneurial people, but especially a group of very, very successful women. And one of them, it's literally gone from we were celebrating. She won she won an award last week at the business conference I mentioned. And basically, the last 3 years, she's gone from one business to 7, and 70 employees to 250. And wow. And the interesting thing, she didn't say it on the day, but one of the key reasons she's achieved that much is because when she started, someone told her she wouldn't succeed.
Yeah, no, it's just as powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, so I agree. Let's just tell people, let's get out there. This is what we're going to do. And if we get halfway there, I'm probably way more successful than I would have been or anyone else would have been if I'd have just said, no, I'll just settle for average.
I mean, it'll also get you in loads of trouble. I told everyone I was going to run a marathon, and now I'm signed up to the New York one in November, and I'm having to train for it. So,
my goodness,
be careful about what you do say to people as well, because you can end up in all sorts of trouble.
Completely agree. Yeah, just be careful. Make sure it's in line with what we really want. And I was talking about quotes, books, podcasts. Is there anything specifically that you're currently learning from, or you've historically had an impact on you guys?
I'm going to say the HRER podcast because we can't plug it enough.
Great.
We love it. Yeah. We love producing it. It's ours. So yeah, that. But for me, books is that will it make the boat go faster? It's yes. It was my Bible for so long, and it translates across my R&I world, the business world. So for me, it's been a stellar one, particularly coming out of the legal profession.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. Michael, any
like I said, you
mentioned a few already, haven't you?
Yeah. Revenue Vitals has been transformational in my way of thinking. In the world of hyper acceleration through things like AI and all the rest of it, you don't just need to be one step ahead, you need to be 6, and you need to do things now because there will be impossible barriers to entry tomorrow. So yeah, Revenue Vitals has been really, really good and stuff like that. There's always a few others that pop about, but HRER, our podcast, been my brainchild originally, even though again recognizing that I'm not going to be the one in front of the camera. That's produced some absolutely hilarious content, but with at least a slice of some learning in there, hopefully for some people.
Brilliant. So let's one more time. HRER, get the podcast. It's amazing, wonderful. I'll get it on myself, and I'll have a good watch and listen.
Alyssa, which one would you recommend to start with?
Yes, please. That'd be good.
Which episode?
The one where the employee was caught sniffing somebody's t-shirt, or
I think that one. That.
It's sure it's not Friends. That sounds like Friends to me. Which episode of Friends? The one where somebody's sniffing a t-shirt. Yeah. Okay.
I think the veterinary nurse. I think the veterinary nurse and the talking TV. That was quite a good one.
This is Friends, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't the emergency paramedic who was scared of dead people?
That one was a good one as well. Yeah.
Now, I do hope you titled them that way, because I mean that's what you need to title them. The
Yeah.
one with the paramedic that did like, right,
Yeah.
okay. So do I? If I'm guessing they're not titled like that. Can if
They,
you?
I think they are. I think they're quite well titled. So
Oh,
you
brilliant!
should
Oh,
definitely find it.
fat.
Yeah.
Well, brilliant, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Giving you a
So,
suggestion, Chris, I think we need a new naming convention. I think we need to shameless steal friends is
I think the one in, yeah, that was it. What they would do the one where or something like that. Don't they?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the one
the
where,
one
yeah.
where the yeah, brilliant. Right, I'm on it. If I can't find the right ones, I'll get back to you guys. You can give me the links. And speaking of learning, what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far, or yourselves?
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, and we
Love
must be
it.
Mm.
we must have a screw loose somewhere.
Yeah, that helps, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
both things really key. I think
Yeah.
100%. Don't
Yeah.
let's not be, because I mean you often find when people say we can't do it, what they're saying is what they can't do, not what we
Yeah.
can't do. That's,
And I think as well that you'll shock yourself how many times you get knocked down and you just keep getting back up. And you just think
Literally what
again and again and again, I've got more. Come,
there is
come for me, I've got more.
Joking aside about resilience in different generations, what about definitely what we learn is how resilient you can be too. And like I say, nothing ever goes to plan, and still breathing and we're still here. So onwards and upwards.
So if I may, I'll share two quotes of mine because they are related to what we just said. So there's a Japanese proverb that says "fall down 7 times but get up 8." And I'm already on 13 or 14 already, so I'm ahead of that one. So we're good. And the other one, which I absolutely love, going back all the way to Henry Ford: "Whether we think we can or think we can't, we're right."
Love it.
And I think for me, I put those two things together, and that's everything's achievable. So fantastic. So looking forward then, what does the future look like for you guys, and what are the main challenges you think you might face, if any?
I think the challenges from my side are going to be the amount of legal change we've got. We're going to have to be so ready to kind of, because the employment rights bill is there, it's being drafted, but it's making its way through Parliament. We've had over 200 changes to the original draft already. So it's a bit like COVID, where you're reading into the night, getting up, and the laws all change by the morning. It's that kind of treadmill of change. So as a business that is absolutely built around employment law, it just means it's going to be a really, really dynamic year for us.
Yes.
So I'd say that for me, that's my biggest challenge. I think that's my side of the business, but Michael will have probably something slightly different.
Yeah, it's for us, it's the spectre of AI. And what I mean by that is it is becoming so accessible, it is becoming so capable, but it has its massive flaws that people without a trained eye can't accept. So the threat that everybody would feel is this going to replace my job? Employment law and law in general, as Elissa would tell me, it's an evolving beast all the time. Precedents are set in courtrooms and tribunals every single day of the week. Language models can't keep up to that. And if they were fed the data and the training to be able to keep up with that, at the moment, the gatekeepers of that content are not allowing that to happen into language models. So you get a lot of people telling you, well, I can just do it with AI. Well, you can't. And we've got lots of examples where it has actually landed you in trouble because the language model has not got the context to be able to accurately update. And the thing that kills you most in the courts, as I'm told often by this, is process more than your case. So one single
and
small.
I think what it doesn't have yet is, so AI can tell you how to change a tire, take this belt off, do this, jack the car up. That it's foolproof. The problem with law is, yes, you can say this is the law and this is the precedent, but law is impacted and evolves by humans and human judgment, and AI doesn't have that yet. And you can sit in front of a judge, and a judge will look at a precedent and say, I'm not following it because of this reason, because of this judgment, because of my discretion and my ability to do this. So we don't have that nuance in AI yet. So yes, we can use it, for a basic set of instructions and to point us in the right direction. But if we're making decisions about humans need to make it at the moment. Otherwise, we are going to fall foul of the law.
Yeah. Brilliant. I find it fascinating. I mean, I do, I think many businesses and many services, as you've said, and you're way ahead of me on this, we do have to accept, adapt, and adopt. My belief is I try to be as open as I can. My first business was in software and software development, go back a long time. So really sort of more basic stuff than you get now. But I always believe then that if you can imagine it, you can create it with software. Now, at that point, it could have taken many millions of years, many people. Now we can do it when the same applies even more with AI, but way faster and probably more cheaply. Therefore, I think I've got to, I was saying to a colleague of mine, ultimately, at some point in the future, and the timescales could be really far away or really close, people will be able to do most of what we do. Sorry, AI will be able to do most of what we do better, as well as, if not better than us. But I still believe for most businesses, including ours, that for a reasonable period of time, and certainly for the longevity of my business as I see it, is well, a bunch of people will go, great, I'm happy. Whether it's right or wrong, I'll go with AI because of those reasons we've discussed. But there's also a significant bunch of people, which might reduce over time, will go, I totally get that AI can do it, but I want to deal with a human being.
Yeah,
I want to deal.
it's a wonderful productivity tool, and
Yes,
you will get dividends from leaning into it as much as you can now. And we do every day in lots of different respects.
yes,
But if you are a business owner and you take the short-sighted position that I will not have a HR function or department, AI will do it all for me, then the moment you end up in a tribunal,
yeah,
AI is not going to stand up for you in front of that judge.
completely agree.
You are the one, and if you are mindlessly or brainlessly, in some respects, just basically taking things from a chat GPT model and pumping it out as your own work, then you're accountable for it. So I think until that human aspect is solved, we've got a long way to go on it. But like
yeah, AI doesn't change the Companies Act and your director's duties. Right. Saying AI told me to do it is not going to absolve you of your legal.
No, I guess 100% that there's part of engaging with legal services. There is that assurance of so I totally get that, and I don't know how much it's clear on your website. Not, but I think that point is really important, especially for you and legal services. Is that the judge is another human factor that will be there for a very long time until we probably will have AI judges. That is something therefore AI can't deal with because we as humans act in often very illogical and emotional ways. So I think that's really important for your particular.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. But we use it, we use it widely, as Mike said, as a productivity tool, and particularly when it comes to the lower administration levels of the legal world. So, it saved me having to recruit paralegals to do some of the work that we would typically ask them to do. AI has been game changing.
Yes.
But I think until we've got AIs making decisions on our laws, we probably need to have the people doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. I think for a different part of what we do, I think the thing that there's lots of AI, ChatGPT can give us lots of models of how to do this or that or the other. One thing I work a lot with business owners and leaders on that I think will take a while. I'm not saying it will be forever. Is what it feels like to own and run a business when, as somebody yesterday had 4 people resign on the same day. The client that you thought was going to be there forever just walks out the door. There's stuff, how it feels that it is something that coaching and support will be there for quite a while, I think, before a bot can go, yeah, I get it. Because
you should be effectively how you approach your work. It should be AI first, but then it inevitably has to be passed through some kind of human logic and intervention.
Perfect. Yeah.
And that's the danger, really. It's the brainless or the sense when it's not been sense checked is the danger when you're using that stuff.
Brilliant. Well, guys, I could honestly talk about a whole bunch of things we've done all day. But for now, I really appreciate your time today. It's been really, really fascinating. And for anyone that's interested in speaking to you guys or contacting you or Hroes, what would you suggest is the best way of doing that?
You can directly message either of us on LinkedIn. You can go on the Hroes website. Pretty much is the best way. Is we're directly contactable. So the rest of the team as well. So pretty heavy presence on LinkedIn. You can, if you want to see Elissa run down the beach and talk about employment law, she's there as well.
Yeah. For anyone who's listening, not watching, it's HROES. Hroes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, play on word.
HROES. Sorry, yeah, bang on.
Yeah.
And I would urge that anyone watching, especially
Yeah.
people that I work with or know me, that this sort of service is important right from day dot. And so it's great that I know you provide for people as they scale, but especially in this period of
Yeah.
don't assume winging it's going to work, because it'll probably bite you in the bum if you're not careful. So guys, thank you so much. And I'd love to swing by another 6 to 12 months and continue some of these conversations, and we can actually see how far those things have
That'd
gone.
be amazing.
But for now, thank you so much.
Thank
Cheers,
you,
Chris.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.